Joining us today. I'm thrilled to be with you so that we can talk about grants and what it is that you'd like to accomplish with grants, what grants can do for you. I love literally all things grants. There's a little bit about me here in my background on the screen right now, so you can get a chance to understand just a tiny bit about me and why it is that I'm so passionate about what grant funding can do in communities. Absolutely love it. So, there we go. Now you can see me. Hi, I'm Diane. And I have spent my entire career in the grant space, first as a grant maker and then as a grant seeker. Grants can do such amazing things, but there is no such thing as a free grant. Absolutely not. So today I want to make sure that we're covering some of the basics to help you think about where and how your organization could use grants to achieve your mission and your vision. As Adriana said when we got started, when there's so many people on the line, it's really hard to promise that I'll answer all of the questions you might bring to the session. We are able to do that in our premium webinars, but in these free ones, it's just so many questions, right? But if I don't get to your question today, please feel free to reach out, whether it's on Twitter or maybe it's LinkedIn or even Instagram, whatever, wherever you are, wherever you want to ask questions, please do feel free to reach out. That one I can do at a slower pace over the next few hours or even the next few days. So as we think about our time together today, small but mighty, so we're going to cover what grant funding can do for your organization. We'll make sure you understand what grant funding can't do for your organization, and I'll share some specific tips and suggestions on how to make grant writing successful for your organization. So let's begin with the good. What can grants do for your organization? They're not free money. There's no such thing. They all require work and effort on your part, some form of accountability. But that being said, grant revenue can be amazing for helping to launch a new program, something that if not for the grant funding, you might not have had the opportunity to secure. So that absolutely is something that grants can do for you. You can also say that grant funding, it can help you leverage other support. So what I mean by that is that you might say, well, I'm asking for a grant for $5,000, but the program actually costs like 50,000 or even just like 15. It costs more than what you might be getting from a grant maker. But because this grant maker gives me that grant, awards me the grant, now I can go to the community foundation and they'll match it. Or now I can use that grant and leverage it for in-kind volunteer dollars. Or now I can ask individuals in my community to provide support because we have this grant. So grant revenue can be the impetus. It can be what triggers these available dollars in terms of leverage from other areas of your community. Grant revenue is often the tie that binds. It is often the reason that many collaborative organizations will come together for the first time and say, you know, could we sit down? There's a large federal grant application, or there's a state application, or there's this city application, or there's this big foundation grant, but could we sit down and talk about what it would look like for us to work together, and could we collaboratively apply for this application? That's really common. It shouldn't be the only reason that you consider collaborating with someone. There should be other natural reasons why the organization's a good fit for you, your goal, your mission, but the grant can often be a trigger for why you might first sit down, and that's okay. That's a good thing. But if that's what grants can do, we have to talk about what grants cannot do. Grants, they're not quick revenue. They are not going to fix, like this, a budget deficit. They're not going to fix a need for payroll tomorrow or next month or even in 3 or 4 months. Grants are slow money, really slow money. Like think 6 months and beyond slow money. I know, I'm such a Debbie Downer, but I need to give you the reality check here for what grants can do, the good, and what grants can't do, the reality check. Grant revenue. I already said once, for sure. Maybe I even said it twice. Grants are not free money. There is no such thing. You ever see an ad pop up, like in a search engine, about free money? No. Nope. Not true. Grant funding requires accountability. Different grant makers have different levels of accountability, but as a 501c3 organization with the IRS or other organizational status, you have an accountability to understand and to be able to report on what that funding looks like. Where did it go? How did you spend it? There's no such thing as free grant money where you can just do things, buy things. No such thing. Any of it requires that you track how you spend the money, what you do, what you accomplish, and the bigger the dollars, the bigger the funders, the bigger the requirements, quite frankly. Grant revenue is not a solo sport. Now you might say, but grant writing, that's one person typing out the application, making a phone call to a grant maker. Yes, there are often solo activities included in grant-seeking activities, but you need the whole organization in order to be competitive and sustainable. Unless you are personally, literally the person starting a nonprofit right now, there are other people in your organization. Board members, finance staff, a program colleague. There are other people working in your organization, whether paid or as a volunteer. They will have to help with the grant applications, not necessarily by sitting down and writing, but in terms of gathering information, developing funder relationships, providing input on what you include in the application. We need those things, or our grant application will not be successful. Okay, so I've said a lot of things, haven't I? I say a lot of things on a daily basis, and I give credit to all the coffee for all the things. But I just shared with you what grants can do and what I firmly believe grants can't do. Now, I know, I already set the stage. We can't get to all the questions, but that doesn't mean I don't want to interact with you. I do want to interact with you. So head to the questions box. Please expand your GoToWebinar control panel using the orange rectangle with the white arrow. Head to the questions box and please type in what is something that I just shared, either can do or can't do, that is new to you or maybe surprising. A word, a phrase, hit me up in that questions box of the things I just shared for what grants can do or can't do. What was new information or something that surprised you? I appreciate your candid responses. It's completely optional. You don't have to do this, but it's really helpful for me to understand how you received that information, how did it hit you, before we move into the next section. Okay, not free money. I appreciate that candid response. That is often surprising, which is why I like to say that many times during a session like this. Not a quick fix. You're right. Slow. And I say it like that to drive home. Right? You want a quick fix? Go talk to an individual donor who can give you a check today that you can put in your bank for payroll tomorrow. That's the real scenario here. Grants take so much time to write and to submit and to have be reviewed and to have be approved by a board before you will ever even get the award letter, let alone the check. You know what else I didn't say? Many grants, not all, but many are reimbursement based. So you have to spend the money before they'll consider giving you the funds that they have awarded you. I know, that one hurts many organizations too. You've really got to think about cash flow for grants. Okay, what else? Yeah, It's money that takes maintenance, okay? Different levels of accountability required. Great, okay. The fact that you can use grants for leveraging other funds, that's new information for some of you. That's fantastic. Okay. Glad to hear that the message about solo writing, solo work hit some of you too. That was helpful. Okay. I want to clarify something, that it is not, that it's money. Question, can it be an ongoing source of revenue? Grants can provide long-term financial support for organizations, but most grants deal with 12-month award periods. Even if you get a multi-year grant, federal grant, state grant, even foundations, if they say you get a 3-year grant, you get a 5-year grant, that's nice because that's a really nice long period of time. But almost every single time, 99.9% of the time, they're broken into 12-month award periods within the larger framework of the award. So when pieced together like a puzzle, grant revenue can be amazing in the long term for supporting programmatic growth, but you're always thinking far ahead, so like slow 6-month out or more, and then you're thinking in usually 12-month or 1-year chunks for what they're going to do. So just a little qualifier there for what I read in the questions box. Okay, yeah, and that it is indeed a good reason to sometimes start those conversations with your collaborative partners. Wonderful. Okay, I'm so grateful. Thank you everyone for contributing in the questions box. That was helpful to confirm understanding, drill home a little bit deeper on a few points. So let's think about what it takes to be successful at writing grants. Maybe this will be what surprises you the most. It is not only about the writing. I'll say it again. Being successful at writing grants is not only about the writing. Okay, who's surprised by that one? Throw your hand up in the questions box. Why for yes and for no? Did what I just say surprise you? Did you practically fall out of your chair? I hope not. Stay safe. But when you look at this image on your screen, what in the world? Writing is only one of the 5 things in this image. Okay, thank you for those of you candidly who typed yes. That does let me know you didn't fall out of your chair. You're here at the keyboard. That's good. What you see on the screen is what we refer to as the grant life cycle. These are grant seeking best practices. That's really what this boils down to. I have them here as 5 items. And you look at this image, you read it just like you would if you're watching a clock on the wall. So start at the top of the clock, start at the 12 o'clock hour. And what we see is readiness. Readiness means, are you eligible? Are you going to be competitive? Do you have your board roster ready? Do you have an organizational operating budget ready? Do you have a project or program budget if that's appropriate? Those are the sort of things we're addressing in readiness. It is so much more than, hey, the IRS approved me and I have a 501c3 letter. I can get grants now, right? Soon. Right? You've got to build your credit, just like you can't get a car for the first time if you don't have a credit score or a cosigner. Same sort of idea. You're not going to get the 501c3 letter and then just right to grants. You've got to focus on grant readiness. And once you've got some in place, we get to move around clockwise to research, which means we're going to find the funders that we think are the best fit for us. That's right. There are many, thousands upon thousands of grant makers that will not be a fit for us. We only want to find the ones that are a fit for who we are and what we want. Once we do that, we keep going around the circle. It's time to build relationships. So outreach, asking questions, making connections. I don't mean that we're hanging out at Starbucks all the time having coffee with these people, but we are getting our questions answered, confirming if we might be competitive or not. All of that, readiness, research, relationships, happens before we sit down to write. Now you might notice that writing is capitalized in an odd manner. Used to drive my daughters bonkers when they were younger. Like, oh, it's okay. It's so that we can easily remember not only the grant life cycle, but 5 R's. Nice way for you to remember, am I following all of my best practices? So just capitalize the R in writing. It's the 4th thing in the life cycle. You're going to do all sorts of work before you sit down with a blank Google Doc, an open Word document, a sheet of paper scratching out your ideas for your answers, whatever it is. You don't get to that point until you do readiness, research, relationships. Or what would happen? You strongly risk being rejected. You strongly risk not getting the funding. You don't have that sort of time. You need to do everything you can to get the funding. So we don't write until we do the first 3 elements. And then once it's submitted, the reason there's one more item in the life cycle is because you have done it all so well that you get the funding. You celebrate and do a bit of a grant happy dance. You don't have to use mine. It was just an example. And then you work on reporting, managing the grant, keeping up the relationship with the grant maker, letting them know how you're using the money so that you can start all over again. So that is our life cycle. The 5 R's, either one works. They mean the same thing, whichever is easiest for you to remember or to help your colleagues understand. So as we look at our different R's, our 5, let's think about research. Let's dig deeper into what that means. How can we be successful in thinking about our research? Who do we want to secure funding from? I have lots of questions, don't I? Okay, here's my question for you. I want to know what your organization does. What are your priorities? What do you need money for? So in the questions box, should you be so willing, I would love to hear, what is your priority? What do you need grant funding for right now? If I told you I was a foundation and you could apply, what would you want to apply for funding for? What do you need to apply for funding for? Go ahead, let me know in the questions box. You can tell me about a program area. You can say it's general operating support. You can say it's capital funding. You need to buy a vehicle. What is it that you need? Let me see in the questions box. Facilities planning, extra space to run in-person programs, therapeutic services, vision screening, scholarships, drought resilience, land conservation, line right below that, programming, general operating support. Yep, that one's really, really common. Promoting home ownership, food and transportation, leadership programs for young people, AEDs for county libraries. Yes, I'm all in favor of AEDs. Yep, work with some EMT groups. We like AEDs to be in the community. Scholarships again, okay, more general operating. Okay, I see like supplies type stuff. Great. As I thought, a really wide range of things that are your needs, your funding priorities. These should be the filter that you use in looking for opportunities. What I mean by this, when you are thinking about the funding opportunities that will come across your desk, or that you'll find in Google, or that you'll find in a paid database, there are literally thousands upon thousands. That's too many. You need to narrow down the results so that they are your priority, and also that the grant maker is willing to fund where you do the work. Let's just remember, you need to fund where you do the work. So you want to be selfish. Use your priorities that you typed in the questions box as your filter in whatever mechanism you use to look for opportunities. If you typed in that you wanted funding, let's see, for homelessness and mental health services outreach, just to pick on one, and you see that there's a program now available, but it's not for either of those, but rather it's for, I don't know what feels really different. Let's say that it's for tutoring services, job readiness, return to workforce type things. That's not what you typed for your priority. Don't go create something to do this program over here when you already have a specific need or priority. I don't know if that, like, the point is when you have a priority, make it your focus, sole focus. That's all I want to focus on funds for. That's what I want to spend time applying for. Don't get distracted by all this stuff over here. There will always be plenty of stuff. Creating and reacting to other opportunities is really dangerous and not sustainable for your organization. It will lead to a lot of stress around grants. Now, when we think about where we're finding grants, well, we've got a lot of options. Are we going to use a free service? Are we going to use a paid database? Are we maybe going to use both? What is the right answer if, I like to say, you're finding a needle in a haystack? Might be because I live in a very rural part of far, far, far upstate New York that one makes me laugh. Haystacks and hay bales are huge. The idea of finding a needle does, as an analogy, really ring home for me. Who is the perfect funder to find? So let's say this. Google, amazing. You can actually use your search terms in Google and do a pretty nice job. If you are a member of a professional association, you might have access to some tools for free. For example, if you are a member of the Grant Professionals Association, that's grantprofessionals.org, you get access to Grant Station, a paid tool, for free. Maybe you're not a member of a professional association yet. That's, hey, no worries. You can go to candid.org. Search for the Funding Information Network, type in your zip code, and it will tell you where is the closest location where you can access that database at no charge. That costs like $2,000 a year. Trust me, like $2,000 to use it from your desk. If you go to a Funding Information Network site, free. So there are some very creative ways that you can access different tools to search for grants so that what you're looking for, what you find, are these 7 points. Whether you're looking for government or foundation, you want to find these 7 points with each and every grant maker so that then you're comparing apples to apples when you consider, who might I apply for? Here's a clue. You can't apply for them all. You don't have that kind of time. You need weekends. You need to sleep. You need a sustainable pace. You need to whittle them down to only those where you will be the most competitive. So using these 7 points can help you do that. So here's a few really important tips related to research. This time spent researching grant makers and opportunities, this is your homework. This is setting the stage for strong relationship development. Don't skimp on your homework. You're right. No one's going to check and be like a math teacher in middle school. Did you do your homework? Can't give you full credit. That's not going to happen. So you have to be your own accountability. But if you don't do your research homework, there's 2 negative things that can happen. 1, if you talk to a grant maker, they will know that you did not do your homework about them, and that relationship will not be starting off on a good foot. In fact, it might be pretty negative from there on out, and you might lose an opportunity. 2, if you don't do your homework, you might choose to move forward on an application, on an opportunity where you really aren't eligible or you really aren't competitive. And you might spend your time writing and polishing and submitting an application that on the surface looks fantastic, but in reality is never even read, is just straight to the no pile. That one worries me almost more than the relationship concern, because your time is so valuable. Don't spend it writing things where you won't be competitive. That's why you need to spend some time on research. Lastly, if you see, whether it's in Google or Grant Station or Foundation Directory, wherever you are, if you see a grant maker that says, we do not accept unsolicited proposals, does anyone know what that means? It's like getting invited to a wedding. If you don't have an invitation to the wedding, you're not going. You're not expected to be there. No one's going to be expecting you to walk in the door. Okay, I know, like Wedding Crashers, the movie, all the things. Nope. If you do not have an invitation from a grant maker that says that unsolicited applications are not accepted, you're not invited to the party. You don't get to apply. They will not read your application. They will not make a grant to you. Don't spend your time on it. Close the record, close the website, move on. You have plenty of other things to do. Anyone have any questions about the unsolicited grants not accepted analogy for weddings and why we don't spend our time on those? Go ahead, let me know if you do in the questions box, because often that's a spot that we get some questions. What it does, though, is it sets the stage for us moving into relationships. Christina, Gold Star, thank you so much for the setup. So if you're not supposed to apply because they won't read it, how do you get invited? That is the million-dollar question, Christina. You get invited by finding a relationship connection point, by trying to have someone somewhere that can have a connection to that grant maker. So let's do a little experiment here. I would like for you to pretend it is the end of your business day. Don't leave yet, because I don't want to get in trouble with any supervisors or colleagues, but we'll just pretend it's the end of the day. And whether you're working from home or you're commuting back from the office, you go to your mailbox. So you're in your own personal space, in your own community. You open your mailbox, and in it, maybe a newspaper or a magazine, a bill or two, maybe a political something or not, there is an envelope with your name on it from a local nonprofit that you have never attended an event for, given to, had any interaction with, but they have asked you for $250. What do you do? Go ahead, let me know in the questions box. What do you do? Do you recycle or trash it? Do you open your checkbook? Do you open up your PayPal or Venmo app and send them the $250? Do you give them $25? What do you do? Trash it, recycle it, throw it away. Interesting. Oh, Cheryl says research the nonprofit. That is interesting. But that was one person out of all of you. If you were to submit an unsolicited request to a grant maker, they're going to follow your own actions. I don't know what it is. They didn't invite it. Gone. Occasionally, one might take time to research it. But do you know why someone's really more likely to read it? If they take the time to open it and they see like the board list, or they see who signed it, and they realize it's someone they know. Oh, I know that person from the Rotary. I know that person from school. I know that person from my religious services, wherever. Now they might actually read it. Well, that's still pretty passive to send them a letter. If you can find a point of connection, LinkedIn to LinkedIn people, or just who do we know in the community, circulate a list among your board. When we can find those people somewhere in our world of connections, we're identifying a list of people in research, who's on their board, who's on their staff. If our board and staff can help us find where do we know these folks, all of a sudden, we might get a warm introduction on email. Dear so-and-so, I'm really pleased to introduce you today to so-and-so, the executive director of this nonprofit that I serve on the board for. Things like that. Or you might now pick up the phone. Dear grant maker, I believe that our board member, Mr. Smith, talked to you at the Rotary meeting last week about our organization. I was calling to follow up and tell you a little bit more about our program and see if maybe we had an opportunity to submit a proposal, right? We're warmed up. We all of a sudden might have the opportunity to get an invitation. At this stage, are we going to be like sitting down and having that coffee with the, no. But we're making introductions, we're slowly warming the grant maker up, we're finding people who they know and already trust who might help us get that invitation. Now, if we're thinking about our grant maker relationship, we have to remember that all grant makers are unique and different. And just like if you were contemplating dating someone, they're unique, they're different, you're unique, you're different. Everyone has a different approach. So that means what works with one grant maker, how you write an email or how you might phone them, it's not going to be exactly the right feel for the next grant maker. So you're constantly trying to learn about the preferences of each grant maker. That's why we're talking about relationships. Think about this stage like you would major donors. What is it that you learn about their preferences? How do you keep track of their preferences? We want to respect the grant maker as an organization, yes, but we're thinking about who are the people at that organization that we're trying to talk to. All right, that does it. We get to talk about writing. Here I told you this section was about how to be successful at writing, but we couldn't do it without first talking about research and relationships. Now, when we think about writing, okay, this is where we get to use our words. It's not really creative writing, though. No, actually, it's not at all. In fact, he started with us as an intern. Now he's one of our junior consultants on my team. But his degree as an undergraduate was in creative writing. And he got into grants because he wanted to use his writing for good. And he is. And he's learned so much. But Aiden will be the first one to tell you that on a day-to-day basis, grants are not an exercise in creative writing. They're more an exercise in persuasive writing, in helping a grant maker to understand what's your need, what are you going to do with their funding, and how are you going to know that it was impactful, that it was successful. That's really what it's about. So whether you're writing a very tiny proposal or a really large federal proposal, the three things on the screen are things you will find in competitive grants. What is the statement of need? What is the need in the community we're working to address? Are our goals and objectives clear? Are they SMART? I'll define SMART in a minute. And how do we measure success? So if we think about the need, go back to your priority that you typed into the questions box earlier. How do you prove to a grant maker that that is a need in your community? That's way too much for you to type in the question box today. No pressure on that, but in your head, how do you prove that need? Do you have HUD data? Do you have census data? Do you have a local needs assessment from a United Way? Do you have focus group summaries from your own organization? What do you have? This should be different for each of you. And more than that, which pieces of information you share with each grant maker is probably also different. This is customizable for each grant maker based on what type of story they care about the most. The second thing we want to see in terms of what helps make our application successful, we need to know about our SMART goals and objectives. On the last, 2 slides ago, I said, I'll tell you what SMART means. Here it is, right here, SMART. You want objectives that are specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. By writing objectives in this format, you are helping to answer a lot of the very basic journalistic questions that a grant maker or a reviewer would wonder about your work. I'm curious, show of hands in the questions box, Y for yes and for no. How many of you have seen this framework, SMART, before? No judgment either way, just curious. So when we look at SMART, specific, great. As many details as you can fit in the sentence. Measurable, what is it that's going to indicate your success? Not enough to just put a % sign somewhere within the sentence. Attainable, is it possible with the resources we have available? Relevant, how does it connect when I look up at the larger programmatic goal? If our goal is like our umbrella, how does this objective connect to that goal? And time bound, 6 months, once over the course of a year. When's it happening? SMART objectives, for those of you that said no, it takes time to learn them. It's not necessarily your natural way of writing. I say that here because it's actually something we not only practice in like Grant Writing 101 and basic classes, but all the way up through intermediate grant writing classes because, well, it takes practice. It's tricky. Okay, and then our third thing to include is a measurement plan. So what does success look like? Now this one I'm actually very curious to hear. You told me what your need was, your priority for where you needed funding. If you got the grant you're hoping for, what would success look like? What would your impact be? I would like to hear a summary, a phrase, a few words in the questions box. Should you be so willing, tell me, what does success look like? This is a really good exercise for you because what you put here should be the takeaway for a grant maker when they read your proposal. If you tell me that, well, they're going to support our general operating work, so our lights are on, our doors are open. Nope, that's not it. The success in that case is how many hot meals you serve, or how many students you serve through the tutoring program, or the knowledge gain and awareness that is created in your community about an issue. That is what general operating success looks like. Let's see, okay, facilities grant, updated building, therefore improved services to the public. Yes, I like it. Okay, serving clients on their road to self-sufficiency. Love it. Seniors able to access in-person programming so that, right? So we want to add a little bit more on that one. So that what? Love it. Okay, those are great. There's so many, I'm like just quickly reading through all the things you shared. Those are great. But it's a good exercise for you and for your colleagues. If we get this 10 grand, what is the impact? What is the success? What is our so that what? What does the funder care about? That way, when you go back to read what you've written, you can check. Does that message come through loud and clear? Dear grant maker, if you award us this $10,000, here is the impact we will create. That's what you want to make sure they understand as they read your proposal. A few other things. I could talk about grants literally all day, but none of us have all day today. When you see an application, there will be a wide range of requirements, character counts, word counts, you name it, different requirements. Always follow the grant maker's format and instructions. Always. Don't disrespect their process. It's a sure no. Similarly, what works in one application is really rarely, almost never, an exact, perfect answer for the next funder. Rarely, hardly ever. Don't copy and paste. Don't do it. Funders can see copy paste from a mile away. I say with authority, remember, I was a funder. Don't do it. The answer might be nearly identical, but do yourself the favor, make your brain go through the exercise of saying, is this that I am typing the perfect answer for this question? It will save you a lot of rejection as a result. So we're customizing for each and every grant maker, specifically answering their questions. So how do we make sure that each of our proposals is as competitive as possible? Are you picking up what I'm putting down? Okay, each application is unique and different. And it's not only the requirements are different, it's that the people reading them and making the decisions are also different. So think about who's your audience. What do we know? Is it a board? Is it a community panel? Is it a family? Is it a corporate? Who is it that's reviewing you? How are they judging you? How are they scoring you? You want your reviewers to advocate for you. You want them to catch your enthusiasm, to believe in your capacity and your expertise. But each of the people reading those proposals is different. Now, as I mentioned, I can talk grants all day, but I wanted to make sure you knew about some of my favorite resources. They're not all books. You can tell behind me, I love books, but there's some great resources. In addition to, of course, I'm biased, our Charity How-To premium webinars and the free downloads there. I designed the courses, I designed the resources. They're what my team actually uses every day. So I'm kind of biased, but there's awesome books and other resources. And so that's why I listed a few of them for you there. What I want to do is a huge thank you for being here and being so engaged with me in the questions box. We've got some amazing webinars coming up. I'd love to see you there. When we go to premium webinars, a little bit longer, lots of downloads and resources in the Charity How-To library, and I don't leave the room until your questions are all answered. So a lot of great information, and I'd love to give you 15% off that with the code you see on the screen. Now, as I mentioned, there were some questions I could get to, and I've been integrating some questions I've seen in the questions box as we go, but I'm happy to answer a handful of questions or whatever you've got for me over social media after the fact. Reach out where you're comfortable, LinkedIn messages, Twitter, DM, I'm there, absolutely happy to answer. But you have been fantastic, and I'm so glad to see that we had some big aha type moments related to what grants can and can't do early on. Please share those with your colleagues, your supervisors, your board. They need to understand grants just like you do for what they can and can't do for your organization. So I've got time. Oh no, I don't. We're actually at time. I'm going to stick around for another 2 minutes. If there's an immediate question that someone wants to have in the questions box, I'll grab one out of those that didn't get answered so far today. But remember, I'm here during premium webinars. I don't go anywhere. So I'd love to see you join us for one of our upcoming sessions. We've got a wide range of things from research to some intermediate classes even coming up. So please do feel free to join us for those and take advantage of this discount code. So, okay, one final question that popped up here in the questions box. Let's get that one answered for sure. It's a great one. So how many grants can a grant professional or should a grant professional write in a year? Like if you're getting started, you're going to love this answer. It depends. It depends on your strategy, depends on your organizational size. But if you are focusing on the grant life cycle, the number of grants, don't focus on building that and building it and making it higher and higher. Focus on the quality of the few that you choose to write for. Even big organizations, when they start to write for federal grants, like, oh no, 1 or 2 a year, no more. Slowly, they take a ton of time. When we're building with foundation grants, let's try 1 a month. Let's try 1 a quarter. Let's figure it out, what it feels right for your organization. So it really depends, but don't open the floodgates and just start writing and writing and writing. Take your time so that you are thoughtfully approaching each one, customizing for each funder. Get the success under your belt, and I promise it will grow. Wonderful question. Thank you for asking. And thank you all of you for joining us for today's session. So you want to write a grant? Some tips and tricks to help you get started. It was great to be with you. Please be sure to reach out over social media if you've got more questions. And I look forward to seeing you hopefully in a future Charity How-To webinar.
Well, thank you, Diane, and thanks everyone for attending today's webinar. Once you log out, you will receive a survey on the presentation. We would really appreciate it if you could complete it and provide your thoughts on today's webinar. And well, that's all. Thanks again, everyone, and have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.